All right. Avoiding Thornbushes, Judges 9. When Gideon died, Israel's righteous leader, Abimelech, sought to become the new ruler. Through grandiose promises, flattery, and bribes, he secured that position and then promptly filled his administration with worthless and reckless fellows. Judges 9:4. One of Gideon's sons, Jotham, described the situation in a parable, telling the people, "Once the trees went forth to anoint a king over them, and they said to the olive tree, 'Reign over us.' But the olive tree said to them, 'Shall I leave my fatness with which God and men are honored and go to wave over the trees?' Then the trees said to the fig tree, 'You come, reign over us.' But the fig tree said to them, 'Shall I leave my sweetness and my good fruit and go to wave over the trees?' Then the trees said to the vine, 'You come, reign over us.' But the vine said to them, 'Shall I leave my new wine, which cheers God and men, and go to wave over the trees?' Finally, all the trees said to the bramble, 'You come, reign over us.' The bramble said to the trees, 'If in truth you are anointing me as king over you, come and take refuge in my shade. But if not, may fire come out from the bramble and consume the cedars of Lebanon.'" Judges 9:8-15. There are several important points here. 1. The trees of the forest tried to get the best and most productive among them to be their ruler, asking the olive tree, the fig tree, and the grape-producing vine to fill that position. But in each case, the good trees made excuses for why they didn't want to serve. With none of the good trees willing to be ruler, the bramble, called the thornbush in other versions, became ruler. Significantly, if the good ones refuse to rule, the people will be stuck with the bad rulers. 3. With the thornbush as ruler, the people had only two options, neither of which was good. Come and take refuge in my shade, but sitting under a bramble or thornbush is certainly not enjoyable. Or if you don't submit to me, I will use punitive measures to punish you. Significantly, when a competent and qualified God-fearing citizen refuses to run for office, the people get corrupt leaders, which causes good people to say, "Politics is corrupt. I want nothing to do with such a wicked system." But the very reason that politics becomes wicked and corrupt is because good people refuse to run. So what are the qualifications that make a good candidate for office? Exodus 18:21 charges us to select out of all the people able men who fear God, men of truth, those who hate dishonest gain, and you shall place these over them as leaders of thousands, of hundreds, of fifties, and of tens. First, the candidate must be an able person, competent and qualified for the position. There is not much worse than having an incompetent individual preside over any area of life, and this is especially true in the area of civil government. Second, he must fear God. Have a personal relationship with God that produces a life of honesty, integrity, purity, and holiness. Third, he must love the truth. Otherwise, he will become closed-minded to the sound counsel and won't listen to correction or rebuke. He will therefore become arrogant, stubborn, and hard-headed, frequently barreling down the wrong path. Fourth, he must hate dishonest gain, not only loathing corruption, but also despising fraudulent perks that might be offered to him as a result of his position. Individuals displaying these four character traits are to be chosen for leaders at the local, county, state, and federal levels, tens, fifties, hundreds, and thousands. Founding Father Noah Webster explained what would occur if citizens did not insist that these four traits be present in their leaders. The scriptures teach that rulers should be men who rule in the fear of God, able men such as fear God, men of truth, hating covetousness. Exodus 18:21. It is to the neglect of this rule of conduct in our citizens that we must ascribe the multiplied frauds, breaches of trust, peculations, white-collar larceny, and embezzlements of public property which astonish even ourselves. Where can voters find the type of ruler described in Exodus 18:21? Benjamin Franklin answered that question. It is observable that God has often called men to places of dignity and honor when they have been busy in the honest employment of their vocation. Saul was seeking his father's asses, and David keeping his father's sheep when called to the kingdom. The shepherds were feeding their flocks when they had their glorious revelation. God called the 4 apostles from their fishery, and Matthew from the receipt of custom, Amos from among the herdsmen of Tekoa, Moses from keeping Jethro's sheep, Gideon from the threshing floor. God never encourages idleness and despises not persons in the meanest employments, simplest vocations. In the Bible, God regularly selected for leaders those who were hardworking, common individuals rather than glamorous, credentialed, and pedigreed ones. In fact, recall that the prophet Samuel had looked at the strong and mature Eliab, and based on his appearance and persona, thought he would make an excellent civil ruler. 1 Samuel 16:6. But God instead chose the ruddy youngster David, 1 Samuel 16:12, explaining that man looks at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. 1 Samuel 16:7. In fact, Eliab, with all of his outward appeal, turned out to be quick-tempered and cowardly. 1 Samuel 17:28-30. While on the other hand, David was described as a skillful musician, a mighty man of valor, a warrior, one prudent in speech, and handsome man. And the Lord is with him. 1 Samuel 16:18. David was an able man who also feared God, as required by Exodus 18:21. Recall from Judges 9 that Abimelech had pushed himself on others and connived to get his public office. The founding fathers knew that the best leaders were not those who promoted themselves for a position, but rather those who had been recruited by their neighbors, just as the olive, fig, and vine had been recruited by other trees, as Samuel Adams affirmed. It bodes very ill to government when men are exalted to places of high trust through their own solicitations, seeking office. He only fills a place with dignity who invited to it by his fellow citizens from the experience they have had of his adequate abilities. The people are certainly the best judge who are most likely to render substantial service. Founding Father Noah Webster agreed. As a general rule, it may be affirmed that the man who never intrigues, plots, or schemes for office may be most safely entrusted with office. Such a man cannot desire promotion unless he received it from the respectable part of the community, for he considers no other promotion to be honorable. The founders also believed that if someone was asked to serve, he was not to refuse that request, as Declaration signer Benjamin Rush explained. He, a citizen, must love private life, but he must decline no station, however public or responsible it may be, when called to it by the suffrages, votes of his fellow citizens. Why was a citizen not to refuse a request from others to serve an office? Because, as Rush explained, none liveth to himself, Romans 14:7, and therefore our life is not our own property. All its fruits of wisdom and experience belong to the public. The founders came to the office because their neighbors called them to serve, yet each would have preferred to stay at home with his family, enjoying quiet private life and employment. But they wisely understood that if competent, God-fearing citizens refused to serve in office when asked to do so, Thornbushes would end up ruling. It is time that we re-embrace this truth and not only recruit Exodus 18:21 individuals for office, but also become willing to personally serve in office when asked to do so.